Hey, folks, it's Mark Murphy with TravelTube.com, the destination for travel experts. If you haven't signed up yet, please do so. I'm going to get a little bit more into that. But this week, I'm going to cover everything from Hilton being in the line of fire. Let's add to that the fast food stuff, Chipotle, Venezuela, and Central America. If you're thinking of traveling to anything that's in that region, including the Eastern Caribbean, do you need to worry about what actions took place a couple of weeks ago and maybe a longer term impact potentially? How about top destinations around the world? Like, where do people want to go? And what are the credit card companies saying, like Chase Travel, the Chase Sapphire card? I'm going to get into that. And I'm also going to get into the travel rewards programs because the credit card companies are far better at the travel rewards than your favorite airline. And unless you're a big time frequent flyer, like I said last week, they're basically a waste of time. What else? How to plan your impulse budget trip and save some serious cash and maybe find a new place to go and explore on a long weekend, like a little bit of a getaway, all on a budget. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that using a tool at Google Flights. Not so much something that a travel agent is going to use, because you typically come in with some ideas if you're a traveler as to where you might want to go, but it's a great tool to kind of explore and discover places. So I think it's pretty fascinating, and it tells you kind of where the opportunities are in travel. And like I said, do me a favor, if you haven't yet, subscribe at TravelTube.com. We send out a weekly e-newsletter, and we highlight travel advisors and travel influencers and their travels that we post on the site. So you can get some great ideas on what the buzz is when it comes to a specific resort, a destination, or on the travel agency or advisor side, how to make money in this business and how to do marketing and a host of other things. So anyway, let's get into Hilton hotels. You guys remember that they tried to block at a Hampton Inn in Minneapolis, the ICE agents or DHS or whatever, government agents that were there, following up on the immigration issue. And they denied them the ability to check in. And they said they're not taking any of these .gov employees. Well, what did Hilton do? They shut it down. The sign's already down. They're out of the system. And anybody who is upset with the speed at which that happened is a little nuts, because it happened pretty quickly. It definitely happened pretty quickly. So they're out. But the crazy leftists, and they are crazy, they are now getting signatures from whoever, people on the street, whatever, and they're going into individual Hilton branded hotels, and they're trying to get them with these signatures to get them to stop taking that business. Let me help these folks. Out. Hilton Hotels gets a lot of business from the federal government. Okay. They have contracts with the federal government. And if you're a property and you listen to these whack jobs, because they're whack jobs, they have no idea what they're doing. They don't realize that these hotels are independently owned and they have to follow certain guidelines. And if they want to stay in the Hilton family, then they're going to have to allow these folks to stay in their hotels. That's the way it works. Anybody that decides to go along with that at the hotel, well, they're risking the owner's ire and a lot of money, because guess what? They're going to lose a lot of money as a result. I would love to see the revenue change at that Hampton Inn in Minneapolis, because I guarantee you it cratered. It cratered as a result of these actions that whoever was in charge there thought was a good idea to try to block ICE. And for the crazy leftists, that you could bring 10 million signatures, it's not going to change anything. Trying to deny people the ability to stay at a hotel because they're working for the federal government and you don't like some of the policies of the federal government, yeah, too bad. Just too bad. And people will say, well, a private company can refuse service, this and that. Yeah, and then they lose the flag that drives their hotel bookings, and they're out of the system, and they got to come up with a brand, get relisted everywhere, show up when people are searching. You see what I'm saying? Good luck. Good luck. But I would say that the old saying, you know the old saying, right? First they came for the hotels, and I did nothing. Then they came for the fast food. Yeah, Chipotle. They're coming for the fast food, folks. Part of the same mentality. Now you have people going after Chipotle because they think that Bill Ackman is somehow connected with Chipotle's management, ownership. Okay, they don't even know what Bill Ackman does. So, so here's the insight for any crazy leftist listening. And I don't need you on my show. You don't need to be on my show because what you're doing makes zero sense and you're not even informed. But then again, that's kind of what I feel like when I talk to a family member, for instance, that's on the left, and they'll make a statement and I'll say, okay, that's interesting. What about A, B, C, D? And I could go down through the whole alphabet. I don't even get to see. Oh, I don't want to talk to you about that. And I also had one say something really interesting a few years ago, and this person brought up a topic. It was very inflammatory about this political side that they didn't like, and I explained to them that, well, that's not actually how it went down. Here's how it went down, and by the way, you can look these things up. It's right here, and with AI, for the most part, sometimes it hallucinates. But AI, for the most part, you can ask it a question and it's going to scan a bunch of websites. Now, it's only good as the content that's on those websites that it brings back in a summary. But as more and more information gets confirmed based on feedback and based on fine tuning these models, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at what's going on, ask a question, and get clarity on what actually is happening. But what's interesting is, so Bill Ackman's a billionaire. His, I think it's called Pershing Square. His company had invested in Chipotle stock as a big investment company. They buy lots of companies, private, public, et cetera. And investors give them money to invest. And then, for instance, Bill Ackman had bought through his Pershing Square, I think, like I said, he had bought Chipotle stock. Okay. So now he ends up donating to the ICE officer $10,000 on a GoFundMe. And because he donated to the ICE officer who shot the lady in the car, now they want to cancel Chipotle and Bill Ackman. What they don't realize is this guy has, like most of these guys, plays both sides. And the reason he said in a statement that, number one, I don't work for Chipotle. Number two, we sold the stock in Chipotle back in November because it was underperforming. So at the time of the big hoopla here about Chipotle, he doesn't work there, let alone own any of the shares of the stock. So I don't know what you think you're going to get out of that, but obviously you didn't really put much thought or research into it because it was very clear that you didn't know what you're talking about and you don't even know who Bill Ackman is. But you still wanted to get in there because God forbid somebody donate to a cause that you don't like and you're going to get all riled up and you're going to cancel that person. So now we got the donation police. They're out in force. We don't want to let the truth get in the way of a good story here, which I think is part of getting in the way of the virtue signaling that these leftists love to engage in and their love of cancel culture. So I don't know. All I'll say is good luck trying to cancel a billionaire, folks. Good luck. And even when the basis is solid, yeah, that ain't happening. Yeah, they're not kicked off a board or anything else as billionaires. They're doing their thing. And yeah, get over yourself. And people in this country should be allowed to donate to whoever they want to donate to. I'm sorry. Did you know donate to Act Blue? Should I hunt you down and be like, how dare you donate to Act Blue? It's a corrupt money laundering operation. Oh my God. I don't give a shit. And most people don't. It's only the whack jobs on the far ends of either side. That is it. Most people don't give a crap. But that's what gets the clicks. That's what gets people all riled up. And that's what creates this fervor. So now we're going to shift gears. Since you can't cancel a billionaire, you don't understand how the hotel industry works with franchises. You don't understand what a hedge fund billionaire does, or that owning stock doesn't mean you own the company and you have any say in what the company does or doesn't do. And you're upset because a guy who's worth billions of dollars donated $10,000 to an injured officer who was performing his duty. And you can debate whether it was justified or not. I'll let that play out. I know what I believe based on what I've seen, but let that play out. But the idea that you're going to cancel a billionaire over a $10,000 donation to something you don't like, get over yourself. Get over yourself. So now shift gears. Where are you planning on traveling? Are you thinking about going to Central America? Or are you thinking about going to Venezuela? First thing I'll say is, based on Trump's statements about Colombia, this is right after the whole Venezuela action, said they need to watch their ass. And he said that about Mexico too. So what you need to put in the back of your head at that moment is, oh, are we going to take action in Mexico? Are we going to take action in Colombia? Is this going to cause a disruption? Even if I'm not planning on traveling to those countries, could it affect other countries that are near it? Like, again, if they do something in Colombia and they shut down airspace, it's probably going to affect a lot of the same islands that were affected during the Venezuela action. That's just a fact. But you need to know whether or not that's an issue. Well, ironically, within a few days, there was a call made between the president and the president of Colombia, and it seems like things have cooled down quite a bit. So I would not have any concern about traveling to Colombia, traveling to Mexico, traveling to any of the Eastern Caribbean. I would put that out of my head. And the only thing I would suggest is you look into getting insurance. And if you're a travel advisor and you don't do this, you should. If you, first of all, offer travel insurance on every transaction, explain to them why the policy is a benefit to them, even though it costs extra money, and the peace of mind that'll come with it. And at the same time, with that peace of mind, make sure that you have the idea that if a war breaks out, you're going to be reimbursed, because most policies that are standard policies do not cover that. And you want to make sure you have a policy that says you can cancel for any reason, and it's wide open. There's a higher premium, but there's more peace of mind. And that's as good as, like, if you're approaching your travel date and you come down with the flu. Well, guess what? If you're paying for that trip, you don't have travel insurance, you're going to eat that trip if you can't travel. So again, we've got a lot of flu going around. Just be smart. And if you're going to spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a trip, take 5 to 7% of that and put it towards a policy to cover it. That's my 2 cents. And that's what I would recommend you do, especially if you can't afford to lose the money. At the same time, if you're in a financial situation where that $5,000 trip, if you had to eat the whole thing because something unforeseen came up, or you had to book a return trip or stay a few extra nights because of a travel disruption, and that doesn't, break the bank for you, then that's like self-insuring. You can self-insure, not pay for the insurance, and self-insure. And in my situation, I'm fortunate that I can have, a $2,000 deductible for collision on my car, because I've never been in an accident that I'm telling anybody about. Okay, just letting you know. Or as Biden would say, I've never been in an accident. Anyway, I miss that guy. So many great videos. But yeah, we had to move on. And we did. But with that said, the higher the deductible, the less coverage or no coverage, the more you're on the hook when things go awry. So it's a personal decision. But for the travel agent who's recommending it, if they don't want it, you had better get them to sign a waiver. Sign a waiver saying, yes, you offered it to me and I'm turning it down. And then you're covered. Just like when you rent a car. Oh, you don't want that? Could you check off that, initial that you don't want the insurance? And that way I've documented I offered it to you. You turned it down. I've got it in writing. So if the client goes away and something happens and they're like, you didn't recommend that, you hold up the piece of paper and you say, sir, I recommend travel insurance on every trip. And that's why I had you sign a waiver, because you didn't want it. And this is why I offer it. And this is why I recommend it. I know a lot of you do it, but for the newbies that don't, it's definitely a thing to keep in mind. So what is 2026 looking like, folks? Did you see the GDP reports? And I know GDP doesn't translate to your real income out of the gate, but it's on fire. GDP is way above where everybody predicted it. Everybody's been completely wrong. Inflation is way down. And for those who are bitching like, Trump didn't bring down prices on day one. Okay, no, he took action on day one to lower prices and lower the rate of growth. You have something called the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has a target that is probably closer to 3% inflation today, but they have a target where prices are designed to go up. Now, with that said, a lot of things have come down in price. Remember at the start of last year, we kept on hearing about the price of eggs, the price of eggs, the price of eggs, and then they went way down. Then we started hearing, gas is way down. So some things are obviously happening, but your electricity price isn't down. It's still freaking insane. I mean, I think I can speak for most of us, we've seen at minimum in 5 years, a doubling of our electric costs. Now, let's go back and think about the biggest legislative win in the prior 4 years before Trump. What was it? It was the new Green Deal, right? And that was going to basically get us cheap renewable energy, wasn't it? And that got passed pretty early. And what happened with it? Our costs went through the roof. Why did our costs go through the roof if this green energy was going to save us all this money? But now they're trying to hang that on Trump. So I would encourage you to go back and listen to the people that basically went out and promoted that bill and voted for that bill, and then look at the price of your electricity then versus today and ask yourself why. The reason's simple. Natural gas, which we have we are the Saudi Arabia as a country of natural gas. We have massive amounts of coal, and you need on-demand energy. But instead of those businesses investing in those on-demand, reliable sources of energy, you have things like windmills that are destroying the landscape offshore that are made in China, shipped here. They don't break down after use. They cause unbelievable issues with the wildlife. I mean, have you heard about whales being beached? We had almost no whales being beached, and then they started doing the sonar mapping off the coast of Long Beach Island, New Jersey, and we had whales being beached throughout the year. And people ask, like, well, what's causing this? What's causing this? And the answer from some of the experts, I'm not an expert on marine biology by a long shot, they're saying that this is a problem. And what you don't realize is how much concrete, steel, carbon, and all sorts of other materials go into building these things. And they have a lifespan of 10, 15, max. They say up to 25 years. I say good luck with that, sitting out in the ocean. And then they have to be serviced and have to be replaced. And you need diesel fuel and fossil fuels to actually make these things. And then you have no way of disposing of them afterwards because they don't break down at all. And So now what do? It's kind of like driving a Tesla, and I think they're great cars. And they drive great. I have an EV. It's a Lucid EV. I didn't buy it to be virtuous and say I'm going to save the environment, because the average Tesla requires 2 barrels of oil just to make the car, in terms of the parts that go into the car. Because every time you pick up plastic, the shirt I'm wearing, the workout clothes I wear, they're all made from oil. The computer I'm talking to you through, the deck here, the microphone, they all require fossil fuels. And best case, they require fossil fuels to make the stuff because you need energy to make it. Worst case, they've got a lot of products that are inside of these things that are made from the byproducts of oil. That's just common sense. So when you're looking at it, just go look at what's happened to your electricity prices and then see how that impacts all of the other things down the line. Because if it costs more to make stuff, then you're going to pay more. But again, go back to the Federal Reserve. What the Federal Reserve say? They have a target price, a target inflation rate of around 2%, but it's actually more like 3%. So that means if Trump did nothing and the Fed was doing their job, which I don't believe they are, then you would still have prices going up every year across the board by 2%. And the reason they do that is because consumers, if things are going down in price, are going to hold back from spending and not spend, which is going to hurt the economy, because we are what's called a consumer economy. We grow based on consumer spending, and we are the largest consumers in the world as a country. We consume more than anybody else. And if that slows or stops, then you have a really bad situation. Deflation is really bad. But despite that, there are parts of the market that have seen a pullback. And like I mentioned, gas, we're seeing it in rents. I own some multifamily properties. Rents are taking a hit. They're coming down. And is that because we're getting illegal aliens out of the country? There's been I think total about 1.5 million that have either self-deported or been forced out, and more to come, because these people had to live somewhere, right? And did that spike rents? Nobody will tell me, but you got to think that if you had 10, 12, 15 million, some say 20 million illegal people coming to the country, they had to put them somewhere. And the hotel guys were really happy because they're like, hey, this is great. We're sold out every night and we're making $400 a night. And we have no downtime because you're running full. No hotel ever runs full 24/7, 365 days. But because of the policies of the previous administration, the hotel investors were like, woohoo, this is great. More immigrants. But what did that do to hotel prices? When you take 20% of New York hotel inventory and you hand it to the government to sponsor people here illegally, that's going to create a big pop in the price of the other 80%, supply and demand. Do you ever take an Eco 101 course? I know a lot of leftists haven't, so they can't really do math, but that's how it goes down. So I do enjoy talking about stuff like this because, again, I've said it before. I've never worked in the travel industry. I've never been a travel agent. I've never owned an agency, and I've never worked for a travel supplier or owned a travel operation. I've only owned media businesses. So I focus on small business and media and, of course, travel because we cover it. But I do like getting into the numbers because I have a background in finance. And the numbers are what make the world go around and make the economy go around. So when it comes to numbers, let's look at my outlook for 2026. I think you're going to see some markets get more attractive because of the hotels and the other spots not being occupied by these asylum seekers. So that's going to free up inventory, and that's going to make things more attractive in certain markets. And it's market by market. And you know the cities, you know the states that have the open border policies and love that. But in reality, I think you're going to see changes from that standpoint. I think you're going to see, because of the GDP boom and because of some of the things that are coming in 2026 from a taxation standpoint and basically from a real income standpoint, because real incomes went down $3,000 per person back in the last administration. They've now closed that. So now it's less than 2,000. They've got 1,000 of that back in terms of real income, meaning in regards to what you're earning and what things are costing you, you now have $1,000 more to spend, disposable income. Now, that's not going to buy you most trips, but it's going in the right direction. And based on the GDP growth, based on some of the onshoring we're hearing about manufacturing and more, based on the Ford CEO saying he has a ton of jobs open for like mechanics, for instance, that can pay as much as 100 to 150 grand a year, got thousands of jobs open. So people will be back in work because if you take away the freebies and they're American citizens or they're here as permanent residents, they're going to do much better working in the real world than sloughing off the government. So all these things are happening. And you may have also seen that we closed the trade deficit by more than half. And it's back to a number we hadn't seen since 2009. And 2009 was a rough year because of the financial crisis. So trade slowed down on all fronts, and we're back at 2009 numbers. So again, forget the politics, just think about the results and the policies, because a lot of people hate Trump. They just hate him, and they become irrational. And what I would say is numbers don't lie. Politicians do on both sides. And if you believe everything a politician tells you, whether you're right, left, in the middle, whatever, I'm a registered independent, then you are never going to figure out what the hell's going on because they all lie. Look at the outcomes. I focus on outcomes. And that's what I try to tell people who are so worked up about what's going on today. And I say, look, you got to focus on outcomes. What policies do you not like that the current administration is doing? What policies did you like of the previous one? And if you can answer that logically, that's great. And that's what you should try to do. And we should all be trying to have conversations and talking about things and not shutting people down because they have a different political view than you. Conversation is what brings everybody together. But too many people, and I got to say, frankly, everybody that I am either related to or, related to blood relative or distant relative or through marriage, et cetera, everybody that I know that is more conservative, but maybe not doesn't see things the way I see it, I can have a conversation with that person, even though we disagree. I cannot, literally, there's not one person that's on the left that I can have a conversation with without them wanting to shut the conversation down. And that's my personal poll, if you would. That's not for everybody. But from other people I talk to, they kind of hear that. I don't think I've ever heard a person on the right say, I'm canceling my family because they voted for Kamala. Do you know anybody? Because I don't. But I know a lot of people that don't talk to family members, including their own children in some cases, and their parents who might be aging. They don't talk to them because they have different political views. And I think that's horrible. I think that's absolutely awful. And I hope that people can think about that, reflect a little bit, and realize politics for the last 11 years have been toxic, and you need to just let it go or open up to having conversations, open up to explaining why you have your belief the way you do and why you think it's so important. But the reality is, if I go on TikTok or Instagram or something else, Facebook, I will see people talking about how they canceled their family and didn't see them for Christmas, didn't see them for Thanksgiving, don't want to be around them. And it has nothing to do with anything personal. It all has to do with how they voted. and go look. Go look. Please do me a favor. I'm all over social media. Send me a video of somebody that's right of center or in the center that canceled their family because they didn't vote the way they liked. Please, I would love to see it because I've yet to see that happen anywhere. And, again, who knows? Who knows? Maybe I just haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I'm not seeing it. All right, back to travel for 2026. Chase Travel. So Chase has a travel agency. You guys might be aware of it. It's one of the biggest ones around. And they can book your travel. And a lot of times I'll go on or my wife will go on and we will look at what Chase Travel, what you can book on Chase Travel using our points from our credit card purchases. And we put everything we can on our Chase Sapphire. And then we're able to go in there and find airline travel and other things that we can book. And I used to be an American Express Black Card holder, which has a lot of benefits, but the benefits were not nearly as good in terms of using the points as the Chase Sapphire card by a long shot. So I don't use it anymore. I got rid of it. And people are like, how do you get rid of that, man? It's like invitation only. It's like this special card and blah, 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 blah. And I go, I am not paying. And it was a low annual fee, relatively speaking, because I got it many years ago, of $2,500 a year. And if you have enough benefits, you easily outstrip that. Great. But the points you earn, then you go to use them, and they're so miserly with those points, doesn't make sense. But anyway, Chase Travel, I'll get into like some of the point stuff. But first, I want to talk about their survey because they said they have some key themes and destinations for 2026 that that they basically published, God, in the last week or so, maybe a couple weeks ago. So I wanted to highlight a few of them. Some of them I agree with. Some of them I'm like, yeah, no, that's ludicrous. So the key themes and destinations, according to Chase Travel, are adventure in nature, coastal escapes, iconic journeys, cultural immersion, and event-driven travel. Okay. Let's talk about their picks for adventure and nature. So they pick Botswana and the Okavango Delta, which I have been to, which terrified my wife and me because you're in these dugout canoes and you got hippos and they are killers. They're the biggest killers in Africa. And when your guide is freaking out and you're in a dugout canoe and he's got a stick and you can't see what's underneath, you've probably seen the video, and I think it was in the Okavango Delta, where the lady got flipped out of her canoe, and she luckily survived because she didn't get killed by the hippo, but she did get tossed out of the canoe. And that's what we were worried about is we're like, okay, we're looking around. We don't see any of these bastards. Where are they? But they can submerge, and then they pop up, and they flip you. And they're not nice animals by a long shot. So I would tell you it's a great destination. I would certainly recommend it. I would do multiple. I would do like Botswana. I would do Zimbabwe. I would do South Africa. There's so many great places to go, and you can do 3 countries easily on like a 10-day, 12-day safari in Africa and stay in these great places and experience something that's life-changing. So I would agree with that. The Canadian Arctic, not so much. I get it. Canadian Arctic. Chile, good choice, but they're specifically talking about the Atacama Desert. Don't know anything about it. I've never been to Chile, so maybe that something would be interesting. And then they say Dominica for whale migrations, which you can also go and see the whale migrations in a lot of other spots. Sometimes we see them at the Jersey Shore. Pretty cool. For coastal escapes, this is where it gets really strange. The first one they talk to is the Albanian Riviera. I have been to the Albanian Riviera. Would not be my choice of a coastal escape, but so be it. But they also talk about in Vietnam, Phu Quoc, which I hope I'm saying that right, and also the coast of France. So, okay, I get it. And then iconic journeys, Route 66, or go to Italy and see the Dolomites. For cultural immersion, you can get cultural immersion in so many great spots, but Guadalajara, Mexico, no, that would not be my first choice in Mexico at all, but that's okay. And then they pick Kuala Lumpur, and I've been to Kuala Lumpur, but again, cultural immersion, Kuala Lumpur. I'd have to look at a little more detail than that because it's a great place with great hawker centers to eat really great street food that's mostly safe. I never had a problem in Malaysia, but that's like an out there one. Again, if they said cultural immersion and basically do Singapore, Malaysia, and maybe Thailand and do like a 3-week trip, okay. Because in Malaysia, you can go to Penang, obviously Kuala Lumpur. You can go to Singapore, and it's like night and day from Malaysia. But there's a lot you can do. And then there's solar eclipse viewing in 2026, but you got to go to Spain for that. And the thing that's really trending, according to their survey, are experiences and purpose-driven travel. And so that has been a trend. Just so everybody knows, that has been a trend as far as I can remember, because more and more people don't want to just go sit in an all-inclusive, drink unlimited drinks, or go on a cruise and have unlimited drinks and go to shows, etc. That's a great vacation, but you ain't discovering anything, okay? You're just hanging out in whatever place you're at. That's like an R&R vacation. And if you've done that and you've been there and done that, then as people get a little bit older, they want to kind of discover new things. Like, I'm surprised I don't see places like Ecuador on here, because you can do the Amazon, you can do the Highlands, you can do, oh God, I'm like losing my mind. But anyway, you can do a lot of great things in Ecuador, and you can have like 4 different experiences in a single small country that combine energy, discovery, nature. I mean, so many great things. And then they talk about under the radar gems. And you think under the radar, okay, so maybe that's why Kuala Lumpur came up, because nobody's really thinking I'm going to Kuala Lumpur for vacation. That's not something that I've ever heard anybody say. And I've been there, like I said, we filmed around Kuala Lumpur. And here's a funny side note. We were in Kuala Lumpur and we were supposed to fly in a single engine plane and film the city. And the night before, because my camera guy, Nick Chu, he went to school in Penang, and a lot of folks that he went to school with in Penang work now in Kuala Lumpur. So we went out with these folks. I think we ate like a late dinner, and it was like 5 a.m. out like on one of these like streets where they put out a bunch of tables. It's just fantastic. So again, cultural experience. And then we had drank a lot, and then we had to go to the airport at like 7:30 in the morning, which didn't give us a lot of time. We came back, showered, and basically went. And my 2 guys, Gene and Nick, drank more than they usually do. I stopped around midnight, thank God. So I felt okay, but I was dead ass tired because we've been up all night. And the jet lag helps you in that regard, but not 100%. And we get to the airport and they close the airspace. So after sitting there for an hour, we went back and we both, all 3 of us went to our rooms and crashed and slept for like 5-6 hours each because we had the rest of the day off. And that was great. It was a great experience. But again, I don't know, maybe not, but you'd have to combine that up with a lot of other stuff to really make it an unbelievable trip. All right. Shifting gears, Chase, travel rewards, and why I like it for airlines. So here's a little formula. For every 100,000 miles you earn, it equates to about $1,000. So if you were paying cash, let's say you're looking at, I'm going to pay cash or I'm going to pay points. If it costs 100,000 miles for a trip that I can buy for $600 cash, I pay cash for the trip, $600. Or if I'm doing a business trip, I always pay the cash regardless of the miles, because that's a business trip and it's a deduction against my income. So I do that. But on the Chase platform, depending on timing and everything else, I find that if it costs $600, let's say cash for the trip, I can use 35,000 miles or 30,000 miles, which has a value of about, these are credit card points, of about $300, the points. So I can spend $300 or $350 worth of points to get a $600 ticket. I do that all day long. And most of my travel is like visiting my family, either in the Northeast, because I live in Fort Lauderdale, or going out and seeing my kids in the Denver area, or visiting like a place where I'm looking at some type of investment. And in those cases, that's how I'll book it. Simple, point to point, easy to do. And the Chase program and the Chase portal for that is excellent in terms of if you spend a lot of money on the card, you'll be able to really make great use of that for your travels, because it's going to be far cheaper than the typical, like what I see with American Express and the value that those points have, which typically, on American Express, it'll be like, oh, that's like 50,000 points, but the product is like worth 30,000 points. They always have a premium on it. And that's the problem I have with the airlines. They keep changing the redemption rules. They keep making it harder to earn, harder to accrue the points. And then when you go to use them, more expensive to use them. So, find something that works better. Hands down, Chase, hands down. Now, the last thing I want to do is get into this idea of taking a trip and saving a ton of money, and doing something you probably haven't done before. So let me take you to Google Flights. And on Google Flights, there you go. So here we are on Google Flights, and I'm going to take you through. And for those who are just listening, if you go to Google Flights, you'll see that, am I going to take a round trip? Nope. I'm just going to put in my origination point. So for me, it's going to be Fort Lauderdale. Where to? I don't know, because it's going to be an adventure. When do I want to depart? I don't know yet. But look, we're going to drill it down. So I'm going to hit the little button below where you put in the city, a pairing, and your departure and return, and I'm going to hit Explore. When it comes up, it shows me Fort Lauderdale, where to, and it says 1 week trip in the next 6 months. So if you have a flexible schedule, you'll see that, out of Fort Lauderdale, if I want to go to Dallas, it's $65 round trip, assuming a 7-day stay, but you can change those parameters. New York, at some point, it's going to be $56. You might not want to fly the airline, but whatever. Spirit Airlines. You want to go all the way out to Seattle, $211. But keep in mind, there are things that you probably want to know about. So first thing is, these could be 24-hour trips that will get you there for $56, but it'll route you through Kalamazoo, Michigan, or something crazy. So I always put nonstop only. And what's good is now it's $199 Seattle, $58 New York. It was $56 before. But let's say I don't want to look out that far. Let's say I want to look at a specific month. Let's say I want to look at January. You know what? It's been a little cold down here in Fort Lauderdale. Maybe I want to do like a city stay because I got my hat out because the temperature's dropping. So I'm going to look for a 1 week trip in January. Where could I go? I could go to Atlanta for $56 round trip. New York is $56. Let's look at Chicago, the Windy City. Trust me, I don't want to go to Chicago in January. That's why it's cheap. Maybe Denver would be better because it has, a nicer climate. So that might work. Or maybe not. I could also click on other places. I can expand the map, which I just did. I could fly to Aruba. I could go to Punta Cana. I go to Los Angeles. And as you look at all the options, you can click and see, so let me check JetBlue, because I'm not doing Spirit. That's $124 round trip from Fort Lauderdale. But JetBlue has a nonstop flight to LAX, $212 round trip. And I would have to leave Friday, January 30th. Now I can change the parameters, and I'd return on Saturday, February 7th. So exactly 7 days. And if I wanted to do that, I would have to take a flight that would leave at 9 p.m., get me in at midnight LA time, which would be 3 in the morning my time. Or for $222, I could take a 7 a.m. flight on Delta nonstop, land at 10 a.m. Let's do that, 222. But then I got to take a red eye back. Okay. And they only have one flight back. But round trip, $222. Would you suck up a red eye for that, folks? But if you want to be in the main cabin and choose your seat, you got to pay $322. But if you want a little extra comfort, you'd have to pay $342. Still a great deal. And would you have even known that? I mean, if I told you you could fly from Fort Lauderdale to LA for as little as $138 if you want to fly Spirit, no thanks. Or you could fly Delta for $222 round trip or $322 round trip, 150, 100, what is that? $161 each way. That's dirt cheap, folks. Then what I would do from here, I would go and look at hotel prices for those same dates in the LA region. And what's interesting about that is when you see flights are way, way down in price, that typically means, especially if it's a leisure travel destination, it typically means that the hotels are probably going to be a little soft. So you're probably going to get a good deal on a hotel while you're at it. Now, again, if you like doing this, the DIY stuff, this is the kind of stuff I would tell you to do DIY on. If you want to go stay at a great all-inclusive in Mexico, or you want to go to the Caribbean, or you want to go anywhere overseas, and you want to have an advocate who can add value to the process and maybe even share some gems that they've uncovered from other folks, then absolutely use a travel advisor. And if you don't know how to find a travel advisor, hit me up on social media. I will connect you with one. Now, the irony is sometimes my wife comes in, she's like, hey, so-and-so, a friend of ours is looking to go to, I don't know where, and, wants your advice on blah, 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 blah. I'm like, my advice is call a freaking travel agent, call a travel advisor. Why are you bugging me? And then we laugh and I connect them up. But I do like Google Flights. I do like the idea that people can pick and choose different opportunities out there. And some of them are great opportunities. So don't be shy, take advantage. Nobody books 100% of their travel through any single channel. And they choose the channels and how they book based on the scope of what they're trying to accomplish. And so just weigh that as a consumer if you're listening and make that decision. And as a travel advisor, don't turn away business because you're like, oh, Mark Murphy, if you wanted to book a Hampton Inn, I deal only with luxury clients. Then for my years of all my travel, you would have missed out on between $250,000 and $350,000 a year in travel bookings, which adds up. Because if I'm going to get to a hotel after dinner at 11 o'clock at night, and I'm going to be up at 6 in the morning and headed out the door by 7, I don't want to spend $400 or $500 at a really nice hotel. I'll take that money and spend it on my leisure. Or if I'm going to be in a great destination and I can stay at a place like the Peninsula and I get some extra benefits, I get that free room night, I get free breakfast for 2 people every day, even though it's just me, so I eat twice. And then I get a spa credit and maybe like a little gift bag. Who the hell knows, right? But the effective rate comes down to like $50 more a night than staying at the Hilton down the street. I'm staying at the Peninsula, bro. And that's where the travel agent and the type of payment and other factors come to bear. So for all of you who are bashing that travel agent a few weeks back, oh, she didn't answer the question. You listened to like a 55-second clip of a 45-minute to 1 hour interview. You didn't get the full context. Travel agents find better deals than you, especially when you're booking higher end travel. And if you're booking the budget stuff, then it doesn't really matter. Then you can do it any way you want. But if you're in that 4-star range and above, and you're taking a trip overseas or to an all-inclusive or a family vacation, and you only get 2 weeks vacation a year, you don't want to blow it. And you don't want to realize that you missed out on a great opportunity because you didn't explore a channel you may have ignored in the past. So that's just a little tip. And that is the end of my prepared comments for today. Again, do me a favor, sign up at traveltube.com, especially if you're a travel advisor or an industry professional. Please sign up. And we're going to be opening up the platform for travel suppliers and destinations very soon, which means I'll be getting some insights from some of those folks. And you're going to want to hear from them as well, because these are the guys that create the products, that create the tours, that create the experiences that travelers are looking for. And they love travel advisors for a good reason. Anyway, till next time, follow us on the podcast, follow us on social media, sign up at the site. Good night and good day, sir.